Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about media and virtual production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about the graphics from the Office Hours Space Project. Tomorrow, of course, we'll talk about the production itself. So we'll be talking about that on Thursday. On Friday, of course, our second year anniversary. So we'll be talking about that in the first hour. Second hour, we're talking about encoding with Jan Ozer. So that should be really cool. And then on Saturday, we're switching things around a little bit. First hour is general discussion. Second hour will be a technical discussion aimed towards education. And then the third hour will be the educational discussion. So the first 2 hours will be broadcasted and the third hour will not. And then, of course, on Sunday, we have our general philosophical discussion. Also, remember that today at 9 o'clock, we'll be talking about web, how we manage the Office Hours web and how Ken manages our various websites he's doing for different people here. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's jump into the questions. Bill, what do we got?
Our first one comes from Juan C. Robles in CDMX, MX, Mexico. A latest update of Zoom Client 5.10.0 has some interesting features. Has anyone tried it out yet?
I usually don't update that quickly. I think we talked a little bit about the one of the new features that's going to be available, which is the basically a green room or a backstage that's going to be available. And I'm not a big fan of how they're implementing it, but because it's only going to be available for events. But I think that is the only one that I've been really tracking. But maybe check with us in a week after we've all gotten around to it. I've kind of learned with most updates to wait for a second before I update it in the system. So let's go to the next question.
Our next one comes from TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And TJ says, I hooked up my Dual-link DVI monitor to my Intel Mac Mini using a USB-C to Dual-link DVI adapter. It mostly worked, but I got a lot of red and green single pixel sparklies that kept flickering in the darker areas of the screen. What causes this?
DVI causes that. I don't know. I think it's probably the conversion between the USB-C and the DVI, usually sparklies are in a DVI cable are the cable. So I would probably look at the cables first, but it's a very old format. So I think you're probably running near the end of it, but it could be a wide variety of. Also, look at corrosion on the connectors. It's basically an analog signal. Next question.
Jens in Sandpoint, Idaho says, how would you go about duplicating a 4K Mac screen to bring it into the ATEM Extreme ISO?
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, my hamburger helper input is my Apple TV. So I just AirPlay over to it and most anything comes in. It doesn't matter if it's my phone, my MacBook Pro, you name it.
Yeah, the problem you'll have with that is a little bit of latency. So you'll definitely feel that latency through the AirPlay. The other thing that you could possibly use is the Decimator 12G cross. So that would take a 4G input a 4K input, and then it'll allow you to cross convert it to any format that you need from there. Next question.
Talak Miguel Lopez Waterman in Salisbury, Maryland, the U.S. Is it possible to jam timecode into Filmic Pro?
Go ahead, Bill.
And I haven't found a way to do that yet. Most of the time, timecode is fed on a BNC connector. That's the traditional way. And I know that some Bluetooth protocols should be able to carry some kind of time information. But I've never seen actual running timecode that I've been able to get into Filmic Pro.
Yeah, the way to do that is through its mic inputs. So if you give it a mic input and then you just push timecode into it, LTC into it, it'll be on one or both of the tracks will get that. So a lot of times what we've done is we'll feed in, the audio just so we have it for scratch audio into Filmic Pro or into a phone. I haven't done it with Filmic Pro, but it'll work. And then in one of the other tracks, you feed it LTC, and then you'll have that on a track that you can use to sync. Next question.
I'm embarrassed having spent a lot of time listening to timecode back in the old days. I should have remembered that.
Back in the old days. Put it into the right channel. Right channel. Yeah, exactly.
What's that sound in my headphones? Oh, yeah. Timecode.
Yeah, exactly.
Jeffrey Reyes in the Bronx, New York says, how does one properly align camera accessories when connecting them using 1/4-inch screws? I'm trying to screw in my shotgun mic to my camera into the top 1/4-inch screw hole. However, when properly tightened, the mic points way off to the side.
Yeah. So what I think Jeffrey's doing is he's got a 1/4 inch on both ends. So it's got a little dial on it, and it's just got 2 1/4 inches that are hard mounted, and that's hard because to get it tight, it's going to be tight wherever it's tight. So the way to handle that is you can get a ball head. Manfrotto makes these nice little ones. Oftentimes they are 3/8 on the input, and I thought I had one right here, and I don't. But they're 3/8 on the inputs, and so what you can do is you put a 1/4 to 3/8 adapter into it, and then you put it onto that adapter there, onto your 1/4 inch in, because it's 2 males sticking out from this piece, and so you put one of them into your camera, then you put this little ball mount head onto that. And then now you can put your mic on, you can put your mic onto it. Now what you can do with your mic is not only get it oriented the way it needs to be, but you can also, point it so you can kind of get it exactly what you want. And you'll find that that's probably an easier way to adjust that. Go ahead, Jeff.
Also, besides the ball head would be, they call them double wishbone, or it's like a double ball mount. And I've got a slew of them, like probably 40 of them.
Yeah,
that's what we use on all our microphones so that we can get that right angle. And they're cheap on Amazon, really cheap.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
There's also one more way. If you don't have any room in there and you want to keep things, you can get a little flat disc that has a 1/4-20 thread on it. And that's what most of the still photographers use if they're trying to mount something. So the amount you unscrew that flat disc determines where your point of camera position is when you screw in the bottom. So it's just another little spacer that you can use to move your position around.
Right. Yeah, that'll work. Next question.
Aaron Giancarla of Flagstaff, Arizona says, no research question. Can a USB mic be connected to an iPad for better audio? Too lazy to Google. Thought I'd just ask this group. Thanks.
See, that is the way to do it. This is definitely the group to ask. Go ahead, Sky.
Well, I'm glad I could Google for you. Yes, I did look that up on Google because I've used both the Sennheiser, the little tiny shotgun baby mic, 120, 180 for 195 or something like that. And that was the 1/8 inch pin. You get an adapter from Saramonic to convert that. Now, again, it also depends on what you're plugging your microphone, not just physically into, but what software, and will it receive it from an external source. So yes, it can be done. And Rode is the second option for going directly into a mic, and from a mic directly into either an iPhone or an iPad. Yes.
Yeah, so I think that the other thing, what we've used in the past, and this is with the older iPads, is that we have a Lightning to a USB-A and a Lightning power used for power. So it has USB-A and Lightning options there. And I may have one. No, I don't have one with me. Anyway, so but basically then you'll put that into the older iPad or iPhone, and then you have a USB-A connection for your mic, and then you have you can still put power into it. And I believe there's a USB-C version that you can get as well that will do exactly the same thing. You just have to make sure you're powering your iPad at the same time, and then you should have a USB-A that you can just plug the mic right into. And most things will see it, a surprising number of them, except for Clubhouse. So there you need a Bluetooth to Dante. Next question.
Bo Cordell in Charleston, South Carolina is up next. He says, I've run into issues trying to build my first LUT in Resolve. Can we schedule an after-hours lut-building workshop soon?
Yeah, we've done those in the past with Charles, but we should definitely do an after-hours. So ping me in Discord and we'll schedule one for next week. But I think that we can talk through that pretty quickly. It's just a matter of you have to, depends on what you're getting stuck with. The thing that I got stuck with is trying to click on in the open area of Resolve and make a LUT out of that, as opposed to clicking on the actual clip that I was color correcting. So when you go into Resolve, you build the color correction, then you right click on the clip, and then you can export a cube file. So anyway, but depending on what you're having trouble with, we'll look through that. But yeah, let's just ping me in Discord. Next question.
Seven Scroll in Brooklyn. Morning, guys. Is there a larger size than a 7-inch field monitor for recording, HDMI output into a switcher, and so forth? The Video Assist and Field World monitors are too small for us.
And go ahead, Jeff.
Adibos Sumo.
Yep, I was going to say same thing.
De facto. It's fantastic. And I would say the monitor part of it is not what I would use for crucial monitoring necessarily, but the recording part is phenomenal. It works easy. It's easy. Yeah.
I believe there's a neon as well, which is I think even a bigger version of that. But yeah,
is 19? Is it? Assume it was 19 inches, I believe.
Yeah, I think
it's 19.
We use them a lot.
Yeah, they're great. No, but that is the answer. Next question.
TJ Asher, Minneapolis, Minnesota is up next. I noticed the scrubbing thumbnail has a couple of minutes off where it should be in the YouTube broadcast from yesterday. The scrubbing thumbnail showed frames that did not broadcast for more than a minute or so after. What would cause this issue?
We have seen this in the past. Oh, I know what. If from yesterday, we did an edit, and I bet you that the thumbnails are offset somehow. So I think that might be what's going on there. But yeah, that could be the problem. I think. Jeffrey, we uploaded a new file, right, for that? Or did we
for yesterday or
for yesterday's edit?
Yes, we had some small problems. We did some editing. I haven't fixed the timestamps.
But this is a scrubbing thumbnail that's off. It's interesting. Did we do the edit? Did we download it and re-upload it, or did we?
No, just did the edits. I'm not sure what the scrubbing thumbnail means.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what causes it, but definitely YouTube can be very off in the where the thumbnail is, and versus what you see. Yeah.
Could they store the scrubbing thumbnail as a separate file than the show?
Well, I think it is.
Basically, what I do is after the show, I have a program that I can actually go to an exact frame, and then do that from there. I know that if you go up to officehours.global, that the frame might be different than what you might see on YouTube. So I am not sure which one you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah. Next question.
Jonas Isser in Karlsruhe, it looks like Germany, is a LUT capable of changing only one exact color and basically creating a latency-free color key. An example would be to change the zoom gallery canvas to green and keying it out in the ATEM. How would you approach that otherwise? The Zoom UI SDK or software development kit?
Yeah, I don't know if you'd get a very good key there, but it'd be kind of interesting. I'm kind of interested in the thought process there. You can absolutely take a color and make a conversion. The problem is most people's greens will not be the same, so you'd have to really figure that out as what it grabs. But when you look at a false color is a LUT. So false colors like take all of it's building basically stair steps for take this area to this area and make it this color, and take area to this area and make it this color. So that's what essentially a false color is a form of a LUT. So you could absolutely do it. I don't know if I would do it the way you're planning, but you could do that. Go ahead, Chris.
The other thing to keep in mind is what Jonas is talking about here is taking the black of the gallery background, and that color black is going to appear in everybody's frame in one place or another. So you'd be better off just drawing a matte. If you're trying to key all the little boxes over, a beautiful sunset, you'd be better off just drawing a little matte that cuts all the boxes out than trying to key it off the color.
Yeah, I would definitely put a matte over top of it as opposed to keying the black. Now, the reality is that no, you wouldn't be able to do that, because I was thinking that what he was trying to do was if everyone's on green, you could key everybody without a box, so we'd all be kind of floating over it, which I kind of like seeing people behind. So there you go, Bill.
Well, I was just going to note, having done a lot of work with black on the second Office Hours video that I edited, black is not always black. It was really complex for me to try to figure out how to precisely get the blacks that I wanted to have go away, particularly from multiple cameras, to go away. In some cases, and depending on how I set the sensitivity of the key to do Luma keys, I had a lot of trouble getting everything to meld into one picture correctly. So I'm just saying, it can be touchy when you're trying to do something. Maybe you're trying to get the black around the zoom interface to go away, but not the little lines in between. That can be very fiddly and very different depending on whether those lines are the exact same black as the framing box around things. Little tiny distinctions in black made it much more difficult and much more time consuming to do that project than I had expected. I learned a ton, but it was hard.
Go ahead, Jeff.
If it is indeed what I think it is, what he's trying to do, which is exactly what Chris picked up on too, was basically breaking out these pictures in the gallery and having them as manipulate, whether you're just breaking them apart. We do that on the stages with our friends like Tony and other of the speaking events with these mega zooms on the walls. And the way that's done is either in Unreal or it's done in, you sort of can do it in, what was that software? Resolume. So it's just a matter of a mask or cropping those individual, in Resolume they call it slices, so it's like a layer, and then you can crop them out. But to key, it's probably not going to be easy at all to make a good clean key.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Chad Lafarge in Columbia, Missouri, and he says, it looks like YouTube is having regional issues, so the show is streaming for some, but waiting for others. We have primary and secondary streams active. What else could be done to protect the stream?
Jeffrey?
Really nothing that you can do. If there's a problem, there's a problem. We put all the check boxes in the right spots and everything like that. But as far as I know, people in the United States are not watching us right now.
Oh, no one in the United States is watching us right now?
Yeah, I confirmed that I went on VPN to go to a different country to watch, and I was able to watch it. But U.S., as far as I know, nobody in the U.S. can see it.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to Down Detector, there's a wide range of folks that are having trouble. You know, it's not just YouTube, so it could be a systemic attack that's going on. So I think that's quite possible right now. We have been worried about systemic attacks for the last week. So, and this is the second day this week that we've seen issues. So it's probably something that's pressing down on the internet.
Is that an attack against YouTube or against us?
Well, no, not against us. We're seeing it against. Exactly. We're not that.
Who would attack us? We're so nice.
We're so not that important. But no, I think that the U.S. internet is being attacked. And we've seen this in the past. Go ahead, Tom.
Well, I do have the feed here on YouTube here in Phoenix.
Yeah, so it'll depend on what the servers are, and it'll also depend on how fast the servers recover. Usually, when these things happen and they don't, take out things completely, YouTube and others learn. They learn that, oh, that was a thing that we can fix. So, it's just usually these storms. But all we can do is do primary and backup ingest, because if YouTube's having trouble, we've had like the entire Northeast corridor or all of the South or, other things in YouTube just go down. It's some server that has had some issue or, again, some kind of DDoS attack. Next question.
Next one comes from Douglas Carmichael. The Zoom 5.10 client introduced streaming to Twitch directly from the client. Considering Twitch is a gaming/entertainment-centric platform and not a business platform, what use cases could you see for Twitch from Zoom?
Trying to be like the kids, I think. Twitch has been trying to move away from, not away from games, but try to expand past games for like 5 years. And so they keep on trying to figure out something else to do there. I think the hard part they have is that the culture is very one way, and it's hard to get around the commenting processes that are already in place. So, but I think that, we're going to be streaming to Twitch too, just as research to see what the behaviors are like. But I think that, I think it's relatively easy to add these kinds of things. Obviously, someone was asking for it, so they put it in. It also could be for gamers that are having discussions with their followers, so they're not necessarily playing games. But we've done stuff where we're not playing games, but we've done like a 48-hour thing, which is all about other things and talks and everything else for fundraisers on Twitch. And so that would be a very Zoom-centric thing, but not necessarily a game thing. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, based on what Alex is saying, and I agree with that, right now you have a generation who are spending an awful lot of time on this platform, and they are going to grow up. In fact, they've already, some of them, grown up because it's been around for quite a while. So as that digital native generation grows up, leveraging the fact that they have habits and accounts and lots of friends on that platform, I can see them wanting to change and try to make it more commercially viable in a different sort of way. But that's going to be a culture clash as they try to make make it anything other than what it is.
I would say, as someone who's streamed to Twitch quite a few times in the last 5 years, I would say that the audience is getting older, but not necessarily growing up. Go ahead, Chris.
That's pretty funny. Yes, I would agree. It is my understanding, and I am kind of anti-games, like in general, but it's my understanding that a lot of gamers use Discord for back channel to talk amongst themselves while they're playing their games and stuff. Yeah, Jeffrey's nodding his head. So having like a second screen communicate while you're streaming, maybe that's what they're headed toward, a gang of, I can't even talk about games like I know what I'm talking about, but I know that just discussing and, making, John's rocket launch work without Zoom, we would not have been as successful as we were. So just having that meeting space literally 24/7 where people could be working on software problems or layout problems.
Right.
So I would imagine gamers would enjoy it too.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of gamers and a lot of social media folks have two channels. So they may have a game channel and then they have the discussion channel, and they get people to jump on both of those that could possibly listen to it. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to agree with Chris a little bit, but disagree also a little bit. Agree with the multi-channels. I mean, my son's a gamer, so I'm sit next to him and listen to him chat on the phone, which they'll just make calls between each other too. Not just Discord or another one would be Mumble, would be another very common used back channel audio. But most of the more advanced games have that already into them. And so you're not using an ancillary product. But regarding the production, I know we've all become very used to Zoom, and a lot of people use it as communications platforms. I find from my experience, I'm a little bit, I guess, done with it as that part. I would prefer to sometimes have more concise information in an email that we can make a decision and move quickly instead of going on and on and on. It's like, well, let's look at this, let's look at that. And I think that the look part is good, but in regards to prep, we could have very well been on a phone call and not chewed up the bandwidth, the little bit of bandwidth that we had. We could have been on a phone call or a conference call or comms for that matter too. So there definitely a lot of that could have been done the same way, but just not visually.
Yeah, I find that, so I will admit that I used to be, even though I was doing all these Hangouts, a decade ago, I used to be adamantly against having meetings on. I mean, I would just literally tell my client who was hiring me to do Hangouts that I could only made on the phone. Like, I just did not want to be in front of a screen and did not want to be like, and so I went through that phase. Anyway, but the thing is that now that I'm set up, that it works, there's so much communication. I'm constantly doing this, I'm constantly like drawing diagrams and talking through things with folks. And it is way faster. I mean, there's like I can have 20 emails, or I can get I can get 20 emails over 2 days, or I can be on a call for 20 minutes with a telestrator, and we can figure something out. And I find that so I've come around, but I definitely wasn't there at the beginning. I was kind of notorious for not getting on video calls, even though that was my business. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So getting back to that original question, the reality is one can be money. They can actually have back channels that people can get on, answer questions and things like that. And two is just basically bringing them into the show so they can ask questions or be on the show, maybe do a gamer versus gamer type thing if the latency is in the right situation. So there's a lot of great things that could happen with this.
Yeah, and sometimes that is the funnel. So the funnel is that the game, watching them game is free. Listening to the comms is a certain cost, or hearing the stuff for the folks that are really into it. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it just seems to me from everybody I know about who hangs out in games on there, they're obsessed with latency. And so any second program that might be inside of that, they don't want to have anything to do with, because for them, reaction time in role-playing games is everything. So they'll spend so much money trying to get their latency down as close to zero as possible. So adding another service on the outside of that, rather than going to a secondary thing like Discord or something, just doesn't seem like it makes sense.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. What digital mixer, preferably rack mount, would you recommend that supports networked audio, Wave SoundGrid in particular, and has an USB audio interface? The goal is to route audio to and from the SoundGrid network sourced from a class-compliant USB audio device.
Jeff Keithley. I don't know why I said your last name.
Well, thank you.
Jeff Keithley, yeah.
Douglas, there's unfortunately a limited amount of choices there, especially in rack mount mixers. My preferred go-to is the TF rack from Yamaha. Unfortunately, they do not have what you requested, which is a Waves actual card, but you could do Dante to Waves and Waves to back and forth if you were going from a computer. That's exactly what we do at my church. Is a Mac that's sitting over there and just it's doing Waves processing and then it's sending it in and out. If you need to stay in the Waves, if you're desiring to stay in the Waves world, there's a card for the Midas and thus the X32. And
Yep. Yeah. So the Midas makes the X32 is a 3U and it'll take the card. Midas also makes not for some reason they took it out of the X32 line, but
those lines they don't exist anymore. The rack mounts, you can find them used, but they're pulled out of the production line at all.
The Midas ones I just saw new.
Did they? Oh,
yeah.
Well, that may be something that just recently changed.
Because I was just looking for it. That's why it's right on the top of my head. The core. The core is the best. One of the coolest things that Behringer made, and I don't know why. I just saw it recently. I just saw it new somewhere. I thought it was Sweetwater, but there was like 3 left or something like that. So they're not coming out in which is odd because they don't have the same AD problems. A to D problems because they don't have any ADD. They're just pure Dante machines. So the Midas has both a USB connection. This is the M32C, but it'll take a card and you can actually put that in. I think that you can do that. But I definitely know that you can do it inside of the X32. Although now that I'm saying that, I think that the USB card. I think there's a USB card. So if you pull the card out to put the Dante in,
that's the rub.
You lose your USB connection to the. No, we don't have an answer.
Dante, that's the answer.
Yeah. Is there an X? Did they make? Is there like a RedNet solution that's like a Dante to XGrid? I don't know. All right. Next question.
Next one comes from Eric Price in Kansas City. Is there some magic trick to keeping a shoulder camera from sliding off besides working out? Clothing choices, rigging. I often felt that I was operating an unsteady cam in Vegas this weekend.
Go ahead, Chris. Can't hear you, Chris.
Yeah, there is, Eric. There's a couple of companies that make custom shoulder pads. I was just building this graphic over a approved background color. It wraps around better. It has, I think it has, let me just do one more. It has like a Velcro thing, and there's a lot of people that will, Velcro this to the bottom of the camera. A lot of it has to do with the ergonomics and the angle of the pad. I will also say I spent many years running with a 3/4-inch Umatic deck behind Phil Azaparty, who was the first guy I used to work with. And when you looked at Phil from behind, literally his shoulders were different. And he spent a lot of time with a very heavy Ikegami HL79D on one shoulder.
All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I would agree completely about the shoulder thing. Yeah, I've many years doing that too, shooting underneath the basketball goal where you're actually holding it. But when those cameras are just you're designed to be handheld. And what we did at the space event, that camera wasn't designed to be handheld. Now there was a rig, and the rig allowed us to create it handheld, but it's a very finite adjustment to find that sweet spot, both to get the balance forward and backwards, and also to have enough weight here. I feel more weight here to me, and I have very rounded shoulders myself, so it's always a challenge. So I like a little bit more of a pad. And when I looked at the rig, I was like, oh, that's not much pad. So if you suffer from the same kind of shape that I do, then that was a big challenge. But there are better rigs. And when you move into that true handheld cameras, a big body just right there by your ear where all the weight is back instead of being out here that's the big difference to us.
Go ahead, Sky.
Yeah, you were doing amazing. I mean, that you would cook for us, you would make amazing meals, and then you threw on a camera and chased things up and followed around jumped in a truck. It was amazing. But there are 3 companies that help you customize what both Jeff and Chris are talking about. And Zacuto came out with the original DSLR reconfiguration, because you used to have a shoulder pack and then a monitor, and then, I mean, you had an IFB in your I'm sorry, not IFB. What's the iPad or the what's that called?
EVF.
There you go. What they said. And so you're looking for stabilization in that area. So to customize that, Zacuto, Benro, and Small Rig have all kinds of little gadgets and gazinzas and gazoutzes that will help you modify that to get a camera stable on your shoulder.
Go ahead, Bill.
And you mentioned rigging. So here's just another note. It used to be whenever we use shoulder cameras, you had a hand up here on the lens thing, and that brought your shoulder up more than it would normally be. Now there's a history of more of these tinker toy rigs, is what I call them, all sorts of arms and things like that. And I see a lot of guys controlling the camera from out in front, and that alone changes the shoulder geometry to make it harder to keep a camera up for a long time. So as you're figuring out your rig and what feels comfortable, just realize that if you can get your arm up higher in a comfortable position, you'll have a more stable platform for that shoulder camera.
Yeah, and I'll go a completely different direction, which is I almost never do shoulder anymore. So for the last decade, I've held it at I've held it right down here. I can look at the screen more effectively. I feel like it's a much more stable platform, and I get a lot less tired. I keep my elbows in. I hold it right in front of me, and I find that is I really like that feel. More than the camera, more than the over the shoulder. Yeah, go ahead, Sky.
Well, again, the traditional photography was you're looking for a tripod, a 3-point way of managing and stabilizing that. And in fact, your head was that 3rd point. So you got your 2 elbows tucked into your chest, and then you're holding your camera and your lens, and then your head was that 3rd point of contact. So that's where we've seen that box DSLR, or the DSLR turn into a box. And to your point, now you're looking right at the lens through a monitor.
Yeah. Next question.
Next question comes from Tommy Schatz in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Tommy says, what are the most critical mistakes people make trying to set up a chroma keyer?
Go ahead, Chris.
They set up too close to the wall. They stand too close to the wall. I would say it would be the #1 mistake that people do. If you're too close, you can't light it well. It's distance. And as it turns out, the excuse you always hear was, well, this is all the space we had. And my response would be, well, you could have changed rooms.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
I would agree with Chris on the space, for sure, without a doubt. And the next thing is, unfortunately, overlighting it is a lot of times becomes an issue too. And so they'll like, oh, wait, I got all these keynotes. Let me just turn it all up. And it's amazing if you have it lit properly with a meter and you actually take your time. It's amazing what you can do to pull a good key with little effort at all.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And basically going on the cheap with any type of green screen, going down to the fabric store and thinking, oh, floor screen is just as close as chroma key green, right? And putting that up, and then putting it up on the wall with duct tape. And then halfway through your presentation or whatever, it just falls down.
Go ahead, Bill.
I want to emphasize what Jeff Keithley just said, because I've seen so many people, as they're trying to improve their key, just simply add more light. And remember, that light, which is full spectrum, is hitting that green. It is absorbing everything except green, and what is being reflected back to make it a green screen is the green light, which means that if your subject is close, it is getting shoulders and rims bathed in green light, which is going to eat into your key and make it harder. So turning it up, adding more green light is not usually the best solution.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the by the way, this is the kind of question that if you ask a green screen question in the evening before or before 6:30, I'll have a lot of examples. so I can show you what I hacked together while people were talking. But I think that, one of the things you want to think about Sorry. So one of the things you want to think about is you don't want to use a chroma key. A chroma key is a horrible keyer. It is something that was made 30 years ago and it stinks. The math is horrible. You want to use a linear keyer. So the keyer that's inside of the ATEM is the new ATEMs is a linear keyer. What it's doing is it's using channel operations rather than a color selection. So a chroma keyer uses a color selection, which is like a broadsword. A linear keyer was using channel operations, which is more like a scalpel. So that's the problem with chroma keys in general. And I don't understand why anyone puts chroma key into any software, because the pixel math for a linear keyer is so simple that there is no reason to work any harder at it. But everyone still insists on using chroma keyers, mostly because I think their engineers don't understand. So that's number one.
You just got muted.
All the things you can't hear me?
You're popping in and out. You're intermittent for some reason.
Interesting. Am I still intermittent right now?
No, you sound good now.
Yeah. So anyway, so let me show you a couple things here. So we had a psych available to us in a second. So one of the things you'll notice is that she is about 8 feet from this background. It's kind of hard to see scale here. The background is lit separately, and it's with what we call green on green. So she's far enough ahead that, and we're barn dooring it so that she's not getting any of these greens, but these are green bulbs on a green screen, which will give us a near pure green background. And then she's lit completely separately here in the foreground. And so getting that distance and then lighting the person separately is pretty key to the operation there. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that way. And if you look at this is what you're trying to do. And this is 15 years ago. So this is, as you can see, because it has a date on it. What you're trying to do when you get a green screen, if you see these hairs, that's what's missing in most people's green screens. This is shot on green screen. This is with a F950, Sony. It's, a very, very old camera, but it was able to do 444. But you'll notice that these are the little details that you want to be looking for, the hair detail. When you're clipping off the little bits here, it makes it feel very unnatural. And so that's the thing that you want to look at as far as that's what you're trying to achieve when you're starting to shoot it. And the only way you're going to get that is really clean green screens. And so if you look at this is a good example of, this is what happens when green on green, is that you'll see in your scopes, the red and the blue, and what you're seeing here is this is our subject right there, and this is the screen, and you can see how flat. If you look at the Luma, you can see how flat that is. That's about as bowed as we want it to be when we're shooting an individual in front of that, and so that is if it's nice and thin and it goes straight across, you're going to get a really, really good green screen. And this is done with, again, green on green. It's a green bulb on a green screen, or a green filter on a green screen, with the person properly distanced from that green screen. And then we're making sure that it's completely even all the way across and properly leveled. And at that point, you literally just touch it and it will key perfectly. And the problem we had is we got so good at shooting the green screens that I didn't have anybody that actually knew really how to green screen for a while, because they were like, as soon as it was a little variance, they were like, there's a leaf in the path. I don't know what to do, because we had figured out how to, but it's all about the shooting. The shooting is how you do it. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
And then reflections. I got a table in front of me, and if I put a green screen behind me, my table turns green. If you have jewelry on, jewelry can reflect and go from a silver to a green easily. And then all of a sudden you have this line going through your neck and you can't figure out why. And even some shirts, some glossy shirts will reflect off of that and make it super hard to do any type of keying out.
On tables, we've actually used it, because what will happen is it will give you the sense of reflection. So if you actually mat that out and then bring it down a little bit, you can actually get something that feels like reflection. It feels like it pulls the table back in. But yeah, jewelry is an issue. By the way, with the green I just showed you, I've keyed people with green shirts on it. When the key is that accurate, you can actually grab onto the key and you can key water. At that point. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Todd Whitney in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm researching teleprompters in Louisiana. I'm researching teleprompters to use with a full-size iPad. Is 60/40 or 70/30 beam splitter glass better?
I prefer 70/30, but I think this is another one of those ones that's a religious discussion. So, but usually 70% transparent. Yeah. Next question.
Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm anticipating setting up 2 HDMI routers, an HDMI multi-view, and a 4x4 matrix. EDID is configurable and included dip switches. What are the most common EDID conflicts, and what adjustment approach is better than just doing trial and error?
I'm in EDID hell, so I don't know exactly I don't know the answer yet to this. You might have to ask us later. I believe that the routers that I'm using in my Mac Minis are not getting along because of EDID. It's something that came up over the last week, and so I'm trying to suss out like exactly how to do it. At the moment, I'm just doing it with decimators just to get it done, but it's obviously I can't keep stacking them up. So this is something we're going to have to kind of lab out. Go ahead, Chris.
I concur. I used to struggle a lot with EDID, and it's not as simple. There's very few people that really understand it, as it turns out.
Yeah. No, go ahead, Jeff.
There's a little tool that we found that works fairly well. It's not cheap, but it's the tool. It's FSR Doctor EDID emulator, and it's a little pass-through HDMI. It has, I think it's 16 different presets in there that you can select the EDID. And if you're stuck in the HDMI world, which many of us are now, that's a great little tool to be able to put into play, and it basically spoofs the EDID and keeps it consistent.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff that I have has the EDID. It has a lot of stuff in it to be able to ID that. It's just that it's not. I've always just plugged things in and it worked, and so this is a new process for us to network into those and figure that out. Yeah. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. He says, I was just given 7 ceiling mount speakers. Haven't tested them, but what would be the optimal layout for these speakers for a basement home theater?
It depends on if they're all ceiling mounted or not. I mean, there's not really a configuration with 7 of those that I've used. I'm sure you can put as many as you want up in the ceiling, but typically what you want to do is look at the Dolby configurations for the different setups. So you have a 7.1, which is probably not what you want. You want the up speaker. So 714, 514, 916. Those are all. So by the way, what they are is a 714 means 7 speakers around you, 1 subwoofer, and then 4 up speakers. So when you see that 714, 514, 916, it tells you how many speakers are around, how many subwoofers, and how many up speakers. And so the closest you would get there would be in a 916, but then you need the other speakers to get along with it. Go ahead, Jeff.
Actually, I have a 7.1 set up at my house, and just to be clear, a ceiling speaker doesn't mean it has to be in the ceiling. You actually could put it in the wall. So, but I would be questionable unless they're like clips or a higher end type of wall mount / ceiling mount speaker. Be very questionable about whether the quality is worthwhile to worry about cutting holes in your ceiling. Yeah.
The you definitely want to make sure that they're high enough quality that it makes sense to do it. You can also, by the way, for up speakers, you can have additional speakers that are up pointing and they'll bounce off the ceiling as well. So those are other ways to kind of manage that. And it actually works pretty well, depending on what kind of ceiling you have. It doesn't work in mine because half of my area where I watch TV goes way up, so I can't. So the up speakers don't work. Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City says, in my multicam house of worship setup, I've been using an iPhone 12 for the wide safe shot, but I noticed that it always seems stuttered on the stream and local preview. What might cause this? All cameras are set to 1080p times 2997 or 30 frames per second.
Well, I think it's the 2997 versus 30, so it depends on what your switcher's doing. But if your iPhone is putting out 30 and you're going into a 2997 system, you may see some stuttering. So that they really need to be. If you don't want to see any stuttering, they really all need to be the same output. And I don't know if the iPhone 12 does 2997. Go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say, also think about what lighting you have in there. And I just noticed that there's often certain types of lights, particularly things that were wired old, that have a frequency that beats against all the standard video rates. And I've often had to turn off the interior lighting and bring in my own lighting just to make sure that I don't get that fluttery kind of thing. So it's just another possibility.
Next question.
Next question comes up from Hasmuk in Cape Town, South Africa. And he says, when I joined the meeting, Dennis said to me that I'm dropping quite a few frames. I was on camera switching video to the meters. He said it was dropping less frames and it's okay. What is this? Dropping frames? How did he pick it up?
Well, I think he picked it up by seeing that it was that you were, when he says dropping frames, that you were stuttery. I saw that a little bit. It's just you're jumping from one location to another video wise. And so but I think it's just looking at how stuttery it looks in that process. So I don't know what's going on with your connection right now, but we've seen that a little bit. Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand says, I'm having difficulty with the mobile URL for Mukana. I'm using my Linux PC for the first time in 3 weeks and had both tabs pinned, but the mobile one doesn't work at the moment. URL for what? For what is the URL for that, please?
I don't think we've changed that URL, and I think we can. I don't know how. I guess we put it into the desktop version for that. But I don't think we've changed the mobile URL at all. So it should be exactly what it's been in the past. Next question.
Michael Forrest in London in the UK says, how can I fix a laggy Bluetooth mouse? Magic Mouse on Mac OS in this particular case.
And by the way, the panel's been very effective at moving through these questions. And so if you have a couple other questions that you'd like to throw in, go ahead and throw them in right now. We've got a couple minutes left, or we'll start early on the graphics. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So two things I can think of: if your computer and the mouse don't have a real line of sight, sometimes if there's obstructions in the way, that can always affect the Bluetooth. And then the other thing is, it depends on your Bluetooth, your Magic Mouse. Is it an older Magic Mouse? Is it running an older version of Bluetooth? And maybe if your computer is running a newer version of Bluetooth, or you just older version as well, like Bluetooth 4, you can definitely run into some connection issues there.
Go ahead, Bill.
I've actually ran across people who didn't know that those need to be charged too. So I know this is silly, but just make sure you put in your USB charger and it's fully up there. And if it's really old, you might have an issue with some of its internal power batteries getting a little old.
And by the way, Dennis posted in the chat that he said, or in the panel chat, answer to how I picked up Hasmuk's low frames. I was seeing 1 or 2 frames a second on his video. When he switched to the meters, they were moving smoothly. So that's how he picked that up. Next question.
John Nichols in the Bay Area is up next. He says, I'm using a Decimator MD-LX to connect an ATEM Mini Extreme to an ATEM Studio HD. Audio is not passing. Is this normal? I poked around the menus, but none of the settings seem to work. Are there any suggestions about that?
And I assume that is a MD-HX rather than an LX, but because I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with an LX, but I know what the HX is. It should pass audio. I don't know of a reason that if it's an MD-HX, it should pass that audio as anything else that would go through it. I don't know. I other than putting it into something else, I would test it, but I'm not. I'd have to look at the HX. I've never had it not do that. We pass audio through these all the time. Don't have an answer. Next question.
Tommy Shantz in St. Paul, Minnesota is up next. He says, what are the issues with NDI that might compromise a mission-critical production?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One thing would be is if you're mixing older NDI with newer NDI. Another thing is if you are saturating your network, because even though you have 1 gig to 1 gig, sometimes, if you get unexpected downloads, unexpected people trying to do things like watching video streams back to you and things like that, that can definitely affect how that's coming back into the computer from whatever device you're coming from.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Without a doubt, poor network design. That is the first thing that will bring failure. We ran, just for a side note, at the space event, we ran all India completely. Every camera that came through into the switcher was 100% NDI and also into the recording. So it was all NDI with a proper network. We're currently now using the M4250s from Netgear. They have an NDI profile for both NDI 4 and NDI 5, and they work well. They work really, really well.
Next question.
Best question is network.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana has the next one. If I wanted to hop on the panel for tomorrow but haven't been on in months, what's the new process?
Yeah, the main thing is that you want to go into the panel view, and you'll see the link every morning, and then you go into there, and you need to basically change your name, like you see our names here, and raise your hand in the back end so that we can see that you're in the panel, and then you'll get moved into a breakout room, which is where we're all sitting, is in a breakout room. Next question.
Yesh in Antigua and Barbuda says, any recommendations for a VST broadcast limiter and compressor?
So I'm assuming that this is a plugin for limiting and compressing. I'm trying to think of the best. We usually mostly use hardware for that. So I have to admit that I don't know of a specific plugin. I would probably go to the Waves plugin, the Waves plugins website to figure out whether to find that. So I don't know VST ones. I don't usually depend on, for broadcast, I guess is what I would say, is I don't usually put it through software that would have that there. So next question.
Next one comes from Matt Cool in Montreal, Canada. He says, what's the best playback platform to have a band play along in sync to a video?
Best playback platform. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, we've been talking about this for a long time, about the fact that audio and video latency across Zoom and syncing video and audio in a live performance has been a challenge throughout this entire pandemic and even before that, and will probably continue to be a challenge for a long time. Live performance, when it gets up into these typical latencies that we're seeing, anywhere from a couple hundred milliseconds to a couple of seconds, sadly, trying to get musicians to be able to really hear, feel, and play together under those kind of circumstances is just really hard. I know everybody's
I don't know if he's asking that, though. I don't know if he's asking to do it over Zoom or whether to sync to a video. It's, they're syncing to
play along in sync to a video. That's
to a video, but not to Zoom, not through Zoom or anything else.
So you're thinking double system, have him play against it offline and then feed it?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Probably in that case, probably the best thing to do is have the video have its own click track that the band can actually hear the clicks as they're playing, because that's probably the only way that you're going to be able to sync those two up.
Yeah, in the past, what we've used for this is Pro Tools. So Pro Tools will play out the video, and it's playing it out with the time code, and it's recording it at the same time. And so when we've done this in the past, we actually play the video out of Pro Tools. And that's probably the best way to do it. I don't know if that's the easiest way to do it or the least expensive way to do it, but we've basically executed that video out inside of Pro Tools. Next question.
Next one comes from Tom Ferguson in Phoenix, Arizona. Alex, regarding your 8x8 matrix switch, would a switch like this introduce too much delay to be practical as inputs on your ATEM?
No, definitely use it that way. And I don't think it adds more than a frame, and maybe less. Like there's nothing going on. It's not processing anything other than routing. It's like a cable, like when it goes through it. So I don't think that there's almost any delay, but I haven't measured it, which I should do sometime in the near future. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What are some options, hardware and or software, to route audio into and out of NDI?
I think that BirdDog makes a fair number of things to get those things working. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, BirdDog is one. The other is Connect Pro, Connect Pro, both of those from NewTek. And then Sienna Processing Engine allows you to do that too with A67 interfaces. And there's a slew of different options through the processing engine too.
Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City wants to follow up on the last. What do you do with when one of your house of worship cameras, the primary camera, only does 2997 or 5994, but the others are only 30 or 60 frames? Which should be the input one on the ATEM to reduce problems with streaming?
My temptation would be the 2997 would be the one that I would push into input one. Although, yeah, oftentimes I don't use input one if I have any like input one stays. I'm so superstitious about input one that I almost never have anything in it. So unless I'm full of inputs, I won't put anything into input one because I find that the ATEM does things that I don't expect it to, which may be part of your problem. I would try putting all the cameras into not using input one and see how things work. It might work better. So it's an interesting problem. Next question.
Next one comes from Joel in Mumbai, India. Has anyone used Stream Voodoo for guests across multiple continents? What is the feedback on it?
I realize that I've used Stream Voodoo all over the U.S., but I have not used it internationally. And we're going to be talking more about that on Thursday, right after our show at 9 o'clock. So we'll have some of the team from Stream Voodoo in with us to talk about that. So I would recommend it. If only we had people here that were in different continents that could test this with us. So I recommend trying to test it before tomorrow and seeing what the stability is like, but I'm not certain. Okay. We are now changing subjects and jumping into talking about the graphics from the OH space. So I thought, huge amount of work and great output, for what we were doing there. And I guess I'll leave it to who maybe John can introduce a little bit of like how, or Chris, one or the other, of who was doing the graphics and how they were putting together. And then we'll go to the individuals that were actually working on it. Go ahead, Chris.
Basically what happened is, as we were getting closer, we realized that although we had many options available to us, we had nothing, we had nothing nailed down. And I contacted Tuomo and I said, I think I first reached out via Discord, and I said, hey, I have a huge favor to ask. Would you be interested in talking? And he said, yeah, sure. And he and I got on a chat, on a Zoom, Jeff, face to face, because I wanted to see the pain in his face when I reached out. And I said, I would love it if you would be willing to take on not just the task of building the graphics and designing the graphics, but what I'd really like to do, because I trust you, is I'd like you to be the graphics producer. And by that, I meant that I wanted him to have 100% say in not only how they got designed, what they look like, but how they would manifest themselves throughout the show. So we knew we wanted to have little, call outs like, oh, it's a windy day and whatnot. And all of that, Tuomo took on himself. He did his own research. He was his own, PA. I mean, he found all the little nuggets of data, and literally even in the after party at the bar when we were rewatching the rehearsal that we did, I'm seeing stuff pop up, and I'm like, oh, I never saw that during the show. That's a cool little fact. Thanks, Tuomo. And what we did is we gave it 100%. And it's not very often that you find department heads that are as trustworthy and mindful and creative as Tuomo, but he took on the challenge. He said, actually, at first he said, let me read through the script and give you an idea. So he read through the script. A few days later, he said, I'm interested. Let me do a first pass of a design. And to which I think I said somewhere along the way is, Tuomo, because he then did a whole thing where he took us through all the graphics. And I said, for the record, that meeting was not necessary. I trust you're going to do it great. And then of course there was the process of getting the telemetry data back, and there were many people working on that. And that was, I would say that probably took 60 to 70% of the time that you spent on it, Tuomo. But in terms of making it look wonderful and be a wonderful experience, all I said was, I want you to tell the story of the day through graphics. And then the way we ran the graphics during the show is that Tuomo had an origin point of the bug in the corner, and everything almost everything grew out of that. He'll get more into this. But in terms of calling the show, the bug was always going to be there. Tuomo had a second screen experience where we could theoretically look at what was about to come up. And if he wanted to sell me a graphic, he would just chime out, font's good. And knowing where I'm cutting or not cutting, I would just say run it, and the run would animate out from that origin point. But that's basically the story of how it came about. But I think the real key that made it cohesive was that one person was in charge of it. There wasn't a million cooks in the kitchen, and he did I kept telling him that week, I said, you are the friend we don't deserve.
And Tuomo, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you approach the graphics?
Yes, absolutely. So thank you, Chris. That was a very, very nice words you said there. But yeah, to take on a project like this, it's not a simple task. I mean, I didn't jump into it right away, so I had to give it a little think before I promised to do it, and in what kind of a scope I'm going to be involved. And when I read through Chris's script, I was like, I have these ideas and I really would like to do them. But I at the same time, I had to be very mindful of my own time, that how can I provide something which is meaningful, but in a way that I can take care of my other customers and other projects at the same time. But then I promised the guys, I told them, yes, I'm going to be doing this. And I jumped into it, and I spent quite a bit of time doing it. But when you're doing a graphics project such as this, it's not a very simple task, because there are several vectors to think about. There's the brand. I mean, what is the brand, the style of the organization, the project, how it wants to be seen? Is it funny? Is it serious? What professional, hobbyist? What kind of approach do you want to take? And the design is something which is one part of the story. It's not the whole story, but it's absolutely one part of it. So the way I work, I will always start with a little interview. So I ask the producers, the directors, how they see it, what kind of stuff, what kind of a mood they want to communicate through the project, and that's what I did here as well. So I interviewed the guys, and I started to understand what kind of stuff were elements which were given to me and cannot be touched, and what other areas were there that could be touched. And since this is a group effort, I narrowed down my scope into just the on-air graphics. So there were other things there as well. There was the mission patch, which was originally designed by David Brady from New York. There was title sequences, there were other elements. There was the actual physical rocket, how it looked like, that was designed beforehand. There was a logo for OH Space. There was this mission patch I mentioned. But that's pretty much it. And then I went through these questions and these concepts, and I came with the design concept. And like Chris said, that the visual, the graphic, the on-air graphics, the concept there is that there is a little corner logo, and it's going to sit there throughout the show, and it is going to be used as the logo and also as the countdown. So that was one of the things. Colors was not fixed. So colors was something I had to come up with. And there was a couple of iterations on the website. There had some colors. The wrapping is using red, blue, white color scheme. And that was the one which I chose just to be on the safe side. So it looks something like the rocket. So it's not completely different from the actual rocket itself. So that was something that I came up with. I have some stuff here what I would like to show you, because the way I worked is that I created this deck, which I just did some experimentations on, and this is the first iteration of the graphics. So it is this top bar, and the concept there was that it's going to be there. It's going to be some kind of a gadget, a device there, which is going to stay there on screen all the time. Then we figured out, or Chris pointed out, that actually that's not a good idea, because we will need to have all the vertical space what we can, because we are shooting the rocket vertically up, and that's why we will need to reorganize the graphics somehow. And then after some discussions, we landed into, let me scroll through these, into this core idea that we would have a graphic on the side, which is going to be the telemetry, and John named this the tower. So this thing is called the tower. And this was just a design approach. This is the first layout of it. It went through a couple of design iterations and the colors changed. And this is pretty much the one what we ended up with. And this was the first thing I designed. And I knew that we were going to need all the other stuff as well. And these markings around here, they are just for my own purposes. This bar here tells me what is the status of this deliverable. So is it completed or not? And so this was a living document during the project. The other elements, the logo down in the corner. Then we had these different name straps for additional people who are not part of the crew. Then we had one for the crew members. And in this one, we, because it's a global community, right? So we wanted to somehow communicate that. And we added the country flag there and the state or country and the distance to home. So how far has this person traveled or how far is that person during the show? So we added all those in, and this was one for the hosts. So the design is a little bit different than with the other ones, just to differentiate them. And this one was the info box, and we really didn't know when I started to come up with the design what the content in this is going to be. But we figured out that there's going to be spaces in the show that we don't have anything else meaningful to show. So we may just, fill in the airtime with another layer of content. It could be anything. And the content, I interviewed John and other crew members to come up with some kind of additional stuff. Then we had this little strap up there, which was used for several things, as a locator, a live bug, URL link, and these kind of things. So it was repurposed for many things. This was the call to action, and I have a little thing here. During the show, when we started to do the show, I ran with this one, and this was wrong. so the hashtag there was actually wrong. So I had to pull up because this was I didn't have time to implement this as a proper graphic template. So this was a picture. So during the show, when I showed this for the first time during the show, and I noticed, oops, I have a wrong hashtag there. So I had to go open my Photoshop during the show, and I had to change it and save it and put that into the system. So the second time you see this call to action in the show, it was changed. So just a little background story there. Then we decided that we would like to have some kind of a social interaction, that we would like to pull stuff from some social media platform like Twitter or someplace for comments, questions, and stuff like that. This design never made it because of time limitations, so I couldn't figure out this template exactly as it is presented here. But still, we had one on air, but it just looked a little bit different. And what else do we have here? Yeah, this was actually never used. So the idea was that when the rocket has been recovered, we will be able to pull up maximum values for different kinds of things like velocity, altitude, g-forces, distance traveled, these kind of things, but we never used this on the air. And then we had the end credits, which the design changed because of time limitations, so we didn't have time to pull this design off, so it was a little bit different. And so it looked like this, actually. And that was the deck which we had before the show, and then it was my task to pull it off as much as I could time-wise. And so the design package looked like this, but then another important aspect of the job, of course, was the telemetry. So I don't really know too much about the hardware and the setup, how it was built, but the core idea there anyway is that there is a industrial controller as an onboard computer in the rocket, and when it shoots up, it has a radio link down to the base computer. The base computer is then receiving data from the rocket, and it is passing that data to SPX graphics, and the SPX graphics would then visualize it in the graphic.
And what's the format of the data that's coming to you?
Jonas would probably be the one to answer that question. I'm not absolutely sure how it was done, but I think it was a burst which had a ton of data in it, and the update rate was something like, depending on the state of the flight, it has different update refresh rate. So
right. Well, and the question I have though is that what when SPX gets it, what format is it coming? How are you reading that data in?
Right. So there was a parser software developed exactly for that. So it was receiving the data and it was formatting that, figuring out which pieces of the data should be passed on to SPX, because we didn't need all of the data that was available.
Right.
So just some of it.
But that parser, when it delivers that data to SPX, what was it? Just a table?
That was a string. So it was triggering a function within the graphics, and it would pass a string of data to SPX.
I've got a string. Okay.
Right. So it's a string of values.
Mm-hmm.
And
I only ask because it's a lot of different. There's a lot of different ways that gets done. Sometimes it's a table that you're reading and you're looking for the most recent. Sometimes it's a string. Sometimes it's because we deal with that in live graphics. Live dynamic graphics is great when it's just a lot of different formats to do that with.
Yes, absolutely. There are a ton of ways to do it, but in this case, we decided that we wanted the graphic to be stateless. So every time we receive a new package, it should contain everything. So we don't do any gradual things, so that we started from this altitude, we went into this one, or it was always self-contained. So whatever we received from the system would always update all of the graphics at once. And since it was supposed to be triggering graphics like 10 or 100 times a second, it would have been super smooth if the data was perfect. As it turned out, it wasn't. But I will go into that later. We had the complexity of this project was quite high, because this was never done before outside of these big commercial space agencies. So we had to figure a lot of things out without ever being able to really test the system. Because the onboard computer is something that John built by himself. It's a unique piece of hardware. You don't want to strap that to a drone, drop it, ruin it, cancel the whole thing. So we never saw that thing flying. We had simulator software running, pushing data, but we never saw the full workflow end-to-end ever running before the launch. So, and on the day, when we were there in the desert, things are pretty complex. There's no electricity, there's no internet, there's nothing. So everything has to be built there. And we got connection between these two computers, the telemetry base station and SPX graphics. We had the network cable between these computers about 1 hour before the launch. And the only thing what we saw, all right, we have a connection between these two computers, but we didn't receive any data because the rocket was being prepared. You don't turn on the computer in the rocket until it's ready to go. So we were just seeing that we have a connection, but we are not receiving any stuff. So we really honestly didn't have any idea what's going to happen when the thing launches. And because of that, we decided that, all right, we need to have something for the audience to tell if not everything is peachy. So if there's some kind of issue, they should know about it. And let me show you something here. So there was a little user interface built to control the telemetry graphic, the tower. So some of these buttons are for testing purposes, but somewhere there's this one which is data link fail. That was a button which was added to the system to send out an indication if everything is not great. And I had to push that button a few times. so we saw that the rocket finally shoots out. We can see numbers, all right, things are great, until we see that actually things are not that great, because we were supposed to be receiving data something like, dozens of times a second. We are receiving data maybe once every 30 seconds. So it was time to hit the button. So I hit the button, and this was the text which was on the thing. So in the graphic we had that message, and I celebrated the fact that I had to push the button by going out and printing these T-shirts for most of the crew who were there. So I went out to Las Vegas and I found a T-shirt place, and we have all these T-shirts for the crew. So
that's great.
So I think one of the takeaways from a project such as this is that you will need to find a way to test stuff. Even though you simulate things and you have things running and you can make it feel like it's working, but if you cannot do the end-to-end testing, anything can go wrong. No matter how much you add fail-safes into your applications and different kinds of issues. Like one issue which was there, and I haven't really confirmed that is this the case, but there were some things in the system that we were expecting metric data, but it was most likely US units. So this is something which I haven't confirmed, but still there are a ton of things which can go wrong.
You should ask NASA about that. They had a little problem with that, where they had
I can imagine
part of the mission was in metric and part of the mission was in feet, and it hit the side of a cliff wall on Mars. So as a result, that
so
all I'm saying is we're not the only ones. We're not the only ones that had we had a zero budget project. They had a $1 billion project. It still happens.
Right. But it was great, and the way the workflow, like Chris explained here, that we were sitting in different RVs, so we were not side by side, so we couldn't talk to each other. We had comms, and we discussed the workflow, how it should be handled, how should we use the name straps, everything on screen, and during the show, the workflow slightly evolved because of a couple of reasons. Well, there was one little instance where my comms wouldn't work perfectly, so there was something wrong. Maybe I was speaking too softly into it or something, I don't know. But then we didn't have a connection, and I had to start to trigger graphics on my own without getting commands from Chris. So I started to do that, and then when the first rocket launched never happened, and things get a little bit out of whack, and we had to come up with a new kind of a script for the show. So then I took over by myself. So we started to trigger in these social media messages, what we were receiving from viewers, and we could fill in the airtime with those graphics, and that was pretty cool to keep up the suspense of the show, and it was a lot of fun. I think I can do a little demo here. I haven't been able to set up everything on this computer because all of those systems are on my other computer, which I had with me, but I'm going to try to pull them up here, so you will see. This is my screen here, and if I now go through some of these graphics, actually what I can do, I can put this onto my screen on top of this one, so you will see these on my screen here. So now we have just the logo and the countdown running, And the way it works is that I can go into this template and I can change the target time. So if I add launch, in Finland it's 5 p.m. So if I add 6 p.m. here, which is 18. So if I take this one now, it is going to show that I have 41 minutes until 6 o'clock. And that's the way it works. And this graphic here sits on its own layer. So all the other ones can then appear next to it. And if we take another one, which is the weather update, so I'm going to put it up here into my camera. So if I trigger this one in, that's the way it animates in. And if I remove some of that content from the template, so if I just do something like this, I save it, take it out, and in again, it is just going to be smaller, this graphic on screen. All these graphics are done with CSS, so there's no pictures involved, there are no video clips involved, everything is CSS. So the way I designed some of these elements, like in the clock, you can see this little gradient, sort of like a metallic surface on that time with a little drop shadow underneath it. Let's add something else in here, which is more pronounced. Yeah, here. So I just designed this in Photoshop originally, and I was like, I'm going to implement it somehow using CSS, which turned out to be pretty difficult because CSS doesn't support gradients on text by itself. But the way you can do it with CSS is that you can create a rectangle which has that gradient on the rectangle. Then you can use text as a mask or inverted mask to reveal that gradient in the rectangle. But then again, you cannot have a drop shadow, because if you add a drop shadow, it's going to be on the rectangle and not on the text. So what I had to do was to create a second text layer on top of the metallic one, which would be basically one with a drop shadow on it. So I had two text strings overlapping, the metallic one on the top and the shadow one in the behind. So that was a little piece there for CSS, which was slightly difficult to do. And all these animations are done just by doing CSS animations or JavaScript animations, things flying in and out, masking in and out, fading in and out, and stuff like that. So if I trigger these few times, you will see how they animate on and off. These name straps all were on the same layer. So if I go from one name to another, it is always going to cut out the previous one and then animate in the second one. So there's no chance to have several name straps on screen at once, because if I play one, the other one is going to go away. All right, so now let's bring in the, where do I have that tower? Now it's missing from here, 1 second. Here we go. So this is the tower, and this is now it is in its default state. But I have this. 1 second, I will need to pull up the simulator so that we can run something here. So now on my desktop I have this. Let's add the graphic into here, by the way, that might work. Yep, so now you can see my user interface and the graphic there at the same time. So now if I click start simulator, so now it's starting to run the animation. So it is just going through a sequence of numbers which have been added to the system just to see how it should behave during the flight. And we can see quite a bit of stuff going on in here. So starting from the top, we have the countdown. The countdown was supposed to turn, when we approach, well, the way it works there on site is that when the countdown goes to 0, there is a guy whose job is to make sure that it's safe to launch the rocket. So it is not being controlled by a computer, it is controlled by a person. The person looks up to see if there are any airplanes in the neighborhood, and once the sky is clear, he's going to push the button and the rocket will shoot off. And when it shoots off, the status of the rocket changes from idle to boost, which means that it's shooting up. So it's burning fuel and it's flying upwards. And in the telemetry graphics, that was supposed to trigger count up clock. So when the countdown reaches 0, it is going to go into standing by state. So it's set standing by there at the top bar, and when the state changes from idle to boost, it was supposed to turn on the count up, calculating how long has the flight been. That never happened. Then we have the graph. The graph is just a visual representation of the flight. These little dots there are milestones, and underneath that you can see this horizontal kind of a little accordion, which goes through five milestones. They are standing by. The first one is upper Fenwick line. So everybody knows what a lower Fenwick is. Upper Fenwick is 10,000 feet, which is 3 kilometers roughly. And when we hit that milestone, we should see that in the graphic. But now, since the simulator is running through these states super quickly, so it just flashes there momentarily. The top one is apogee, and at the apogee, a drogue is shoot out. It's a little parachute which is slowing the rocket down, and it takes quite some time for it to start to descend. And I don't remember what was the altitude for the fourth milestone, which is the main chute, which starts to bring the speed down a lot. And then the fifth one, the final one, is then the touchdown, or it has landed down. Another thing down there is that I can trigger, let's stop this simulator, so it's bugging me because it's running so fast. But in any case, so we have these little messages. We can click here just to set a standby message into the screen, status OK message, distance. This was supposed to be the default one. I couldn't use this one there on the day because we never got meaningful numbers, so the distance was all over the place. So I couldn't use that on air. Success, we never saw it because we never saw the landing. So we never saw an explosion either. So kaboom was there just to, if the thing would have exploded, I would have hit that button. This is what we added on the day because we were pretty sure that there's going to be some kind of a challenge with the telemetry, and this is what we used during the show. And yeah, underneath, of course, those are the velocity in kilometers per hour and altitude in meters. The only thing which worked almost, it worked, but was the altitude. So the meters we got, that was correct, but just the refresh rate of that number was not consistent. So sometimes we were receiving that number a couple of times a second. Sometimes it took 30 seconds to get an update. So that was a challenge we had.
That's great. Before we go any further, I think what we're going to do is we have a lot of questions that are stacking up.
Right.
So we'll cut to those and then we'll come back. We'll cut to those and then come back. I think Mitchell has some stuff to show as well. So let's go ahead and jump into the questions.
Okay, amazing. Douglas Carmichael has our first one. What tools did you use to create the custom SPX-GC templates for the broadcast, and how did you add dynamic data, countdown timer, and flight data to the graphics in real time?
Right. The way it works is that all these, as I said earlier, is that these are CSS JavaScript. So there were no WYSIWYG editors used at all. So it was all hand coded. Some of these templates were modifications of existing templates, since they the functionality is quite often in these name straps and these kind of things is pretty much the same. So it was just a visual change from an existing template. And the updates, there is a mechanism in SPX that you can trigger externally a function, and that function can carry in data, and the data can then make changes on air. So from an external system, you can trigger graphics. And it's exactly the same thing what you see down here with our names. So that works exactly like that.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. And Peter says, having worked briefly at one of the space companies, MECO, MECO, is always mentioned during launches for larger rockets. Are the stats for MECO important for smaller rockets like the office hours space launch?
Well, MECO means main engine cutoff. So that is a thing which you will need to ask John Bredow about it. I'm not sure how it works in these circles. So we never used it because our rocket was a single stage rocket. So there was no first and second stage.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
If the government let me use liquid fuel, I could do a main engine cutoff, but I have to use ammonium perchlorate, and the motor burned about 5.9 seconds and then it's out of fuel.
Now, if you wanted to go to a higher, if you wanted to go a lot higher, would you just use multiple stages of the same fuel?
Or a bigger motor. And so that's what we're planning on next. And so the largest motor a civilian can shoot is an S class, and every alphanumeric designation is double the power. We were N, and so we're planning an S powered rocket now. So more fuel, bigger motor.
That's great.
That's 5 doublings from N to S? My gosh, that's going to be a monster.
It's going to be great. Next question.
Next one comes from Eric Price in Kansas City. What considerations were factored into the choice of typefaces used in the on-screen graphics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there are always a couple of things. Legibility, of course, is something that you will need to be able to make out what it says in the graphics. So that's one of them. So the second one, and I would say on this project, the first one was the branding. That it should feel techy. It should feel, it should feel nice. And so this was something that, and also this in this specific project, there would need to be several weights, bolts, light ones for different purposes. So the choice here was suited the project pretty well, I think.
What was the typeface?
The typeface is Seira, SEIRA.
That's great. Next question.
Eric Price in Kansas City says, Tuomo's graphics design aesthetic is exceptional. When will the Datalink Fail t-shirt be available on the Office Hours Space Store to celebrate his incredible work?
Go ahead, Sky, real quick.
Well, I just want to say how grateful I am that Tuomo just appeared, and so did these T-shirts. That he continued to bring a way above and beyond from such distances, but from such breadth of experience. And again, failure was a part of the matrix. We wanted to fail forward, fail fast, and learning, adapting, and modifying. We had a lot of people that had a lot of disaster and military experience, and consequently, we always had alternatives that we were in plan C several times. But thank you.
Yeah, Bill, real quick.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I was astonished at how many potential things that I had no clue about could go wrong. And I'll just mention very briefly a couple of them. Number one, I had a GoPro that I considered sacrificial that I put under the rocket. And when the thing lit off, I saw a little bit of it at the beginning, but then I saw something I have not seen. Now, this was a solid state camera, and it was like some huge radio wave had gotten, and somebody talked to me about the fact that there's actually generated a lot of RF and EM pulse in the middle of when a regular rocket goes off. I think it messed up that whole little moment of the recording. So that astonished me. The other thing is how fast these go up. So Doppler data back down to the ground seems to me a miracle. I mean, when the big rockets go off, they go up kind of slowly in the first stage. This thing goes from 0 to thousands of feet in a fraction of that time. And amazing that it gets anything back to the ground in my thinking.
Next question.
Next question comes from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Tuomo is a huge star. Who knew everyone's so tall in person? The final testing was very last minute other than more time. What else could have been improved for next time?
What would you improve?
I think all of us in the crew have been writing their own notes about things which can be improved. I think the testing overall is a big takeaway for me. So I would like to have some kind of a mechanism to test all of the systems, working end to end.
Yep, go ahead, John.
We have a dedicated producer who we cannot name because he got hired by one of the big rocket companies in the middle of writing our parser. And so Jonas had to take over the parsing code midstream. And then it took me 3 months to get that unit because of the chip shortage. I should have bought two, one that we could have tested because I was building the actual unit and those guys couldn't do any testing. We didn't do any testing at the dry lake, and then we had a ton of wind out there. And so we needed really a test unit that we could have flown on a smaller rocket to test that out.
There you go, Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say testing. Also, that was what we really desperately needed, was a little bit more time. One more day. Just one more day.
It always seems with live, it's always like one more day. That was a great rehearsal. So the were they shooting rockets all weekend or just the day of?
Friday, Saturday. They scrubbed the launch Saturday. We had 50 miles. You couldn't see out there.
What I would do is tell us what the budget is to build, not an S class, but if you had another N class, I would tell us what the budget is to build 3 and just shoot one a day.
We're building 4 next time.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then you just shoot them. You just shoot a whole bunch of them. And then the main broadcast is there can be a behind the scenes broadcast for all of us to watch while you guys are testing it and trying to figure it out. But, I would just go back to contact, why build one when you could build 2 for twice the price? Go ahead, Sky.
Well, and Kyle Hammond, he sacrificed himself the night before for the broadcast, and he continued to be with us throughout the evening as we were continuing to plug things in and find ways to even get the broadcast out. So I want to lift him up as a thank you as well for being that sacrifice.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Eduardo Augustine in Panama. He says, fantastic graphics. It seems NASA or SpaceX level, even better.
Yeah, I think a couple more of these, and I think they have big budgets and all kinds of other things, and I think we took a big slice at that direction really quickly, and so I think that a couple more iterations, I think we could do a lot of damage. Next question.
All those videos of the early SpaceX launches crashing. Yeah, it takes a while.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It took. I mean, and they're. I think within a couple, they'll look to us to what we're doing with it, because I think that they're not moving very fast, so they've kind of settled into something safe. Next question.
Eduardo Augustine again in Panama. When you start your design process, do you create a mock-up with the design software, or do you go into code right away?
Depends on the project. If I'm doing something which I have a very clear picture in my head, and I'm going to be the client of the project somehow, then I'm just going to go into code. But in these client projects, I always do a mock-up because it saves me time. I can just show the client what the design approach is going to be, and once that is approved, then I jump into code. So in this project, I absolutely went with the second route, so doing the design first.
Yeah. Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle here on the panel. How long have you been doing visual graphics, and for what kind of uses?
Well, I have been in broadcast television for about 20 years. So I started in the news graphics newsroom as a news graphic designer. Then I moved into marketing, and I've been doing program promotions for about 15, 20 years. And now I'm doing all sorts of television projects, mostly here in Finland, but in other places as well.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand's up next. He says, you said all the graphics were done in CSS. What version did you standardize on? I had a contract years ago where I'd revamped the Australian postal portal only to find that the browser of choice in use was Internet Explorer 6. Yes.
Yes, that was nice. So I can feel your pain from here. So luckily in this project, I don't need to worry about CSS standards or any other browser standard or anything, because it's not publicly used. It's used in a closed system where I can control which software versions are used. So I can use the most recent versions of everything.
Next question.
Leland Best in Corona, Michigan says, were storyboards produced prior to beginning the video collection process, or was it more ad hoc?
Go ahead, Sky.
Yes, absolutely. There was a run of show, and then Chris started creating stories. And so we were challenged by making sure those were collaborative, but Chris continued to develop the project in the sense of one story at a time so that we could have alternate throw-ins as well as the live.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Fenwick often asked me what was the most important tool that we used for the launch. And it was Zoom. We were on Zoom for, 8, 10, 12 hours at a time managing the project. It was an indispensable tool that we used to plan everything out. And then Chris did some great slides that helped the run a show. It was run a show plus.
The next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia. Next, I'd like to see Tuomo's work in progress. Thank you. That was very interesting to see how you work. What are you using for mock-ups? How do you manage the living document with the team?
In this project, everything was just designed in a design software and copy and pasted into Google Slides. And these Google Slides were then shared with the crew, and they could write their own, comments into it if needed. So that was our tool of choice in this project.
Next question.
David Brady, New York City. Was the Hour of Happy a dry run test of all the elements the night before? What, if any, workflows were discovered?
Go ahead, Chris.
As it turns out, doing Kyle's Hour of Happy with, and I got to say, it was super fun. I think I missed the best shot of the thing. It was quite similar. We had a remote participant. So as it turned out, and it was something that we found out really late in the process. We had sort of in our minds said, Friday is all day Friday. I want to rehearse. I want to do little bits. I want to string more bits together. I want to try the transition from this to this. Well, besides not having everything working properly, we also didn't have Vienna. And, here's a woman who's a brand new doctor and working in a brand new job. And she's like, I have to be at work. So, and plus, be on the other side of the world. But having Kyle being a remote contributor, as Vienna was going to be, and having Brady being a local participant, as Braden was going to be, turned out to be a nice way to kind of, rehearse everything with the thumb screws a little tighter than just a normal rehearsal. So it was fun to be able to do that.
Good, Sky.
Well, and that Kyle had already advertised from Chicago that at 5:00, his show Signature Cocktail was going to go live. At 4:45, he found somebody else to come in at the last minute and do his show from Chicago, but then was willing to stay on and continue to work with us. So at 7:00, 8:00 in the desert, it's now 10, 11 o'clock now in Chicago. He's already done one Signature Cocktail show. And I also wanted to say thank you to David Brady for jumping in and testing the product. And Kyle, you're a hero. So are you, David.
Go ahead, John.
So we're going to show more of this tomorrow. We had an actual set with 3 cameras set up under an Easy Up for this particular show and for some of the Rocket show. But the difference between the two is telemetry. And we didn't have an opportunity to rehearse the telemetry, which we'll do next time.
Next question.
Eduardo Augustine in Panama's back again. How are graphics presented? Are those strapped to the source of each shot or an overall graphic manager that you switch depending on what is shown?
Go ahead, Chris.
Asked and answered. Yeah. Tuomo was absolutely 100% in charge. It was a single key that we would pull out, cut to a new shot, drop in a new strap. It was not like Twit is very famous for having, their switcher calls up a source and a graphic every camera cut. We did not choose to do it that way. We had a separate downstream key.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, how much was triggered manually and how much was from the API?
Actually, quite a bit I would say all of the graphics were controlled through an API using Stream Deck. So I brought my Stream Deck with me. So all the triggering was done using Stream Deck, and all the telemetry data was coming in through an API as well. So most of the triggering was done using an API.
I had no idea you were even using a Stream Deck. Tuomo had a 24, 30-foot RV all to himself. The rest of us were in various trailers, and yeah. So I never even saw his desk. That's cool.
Next question.
Joel in Mumbai, India said, could Node CG be used as an alternative to SPX for the graphics?
Now, as a note, I want to make sure everyone's clear, because people may not know that Tuomo develops SPX. So in this case, probably not, because it's his app. I mean, it's what he's building. That's one of the big advantages that we had a developer who really, could make any changes necessary. It's kind of the best case scenario when it comes to developing graphics. But Tuomo, how would you compare Node CG to what you do?
Technically, they are quite close. I haven't used the Node CG myself. I have heard about it, and I know the backend works roughly the same way, but I wouldn't use it. I would use SPX.
Exactly, and so would we. Obviously, SPX also, by the way, all the graphics that you see, the lower thirds and everything else that we use for this show are all using SPX as well. Go ahead, Chris.
I think the other thing to keep in mind is you get Tuomo. I mean, Tuomo wrote a great app. But Tuomo is a skilled and seasoned pro. And that's why you can just say, Tuomo, make lovely, and just walk away. And there were multiple times where I said, Tuomo, you don't need to clear this with me. Just decide and make it great. The other thing is, a little bit back to the last question, to me, old guy like me, to imagine that a URL, literally a URL, gets plugged into a switcher and it comes with an alpha channel. I'm like, that doesn't barely even compute in my head. Like, I can't, like, that doesn't make sense. I'm used to seeing key fill, key source on the back of a CG that I patch into the key fill, and key source on the back of the switcher. So the way that works is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Chris stole some of my thunder. I wanted to give the 30,000-foot overview. I'm an IP guy, comes from, from HTML and CSS, so I totally am comfortable. Tuomo's system is a web server running, and then the code is HTML and CSS. It makes perfect sense for me to integrate that into production, as opposed to using a dedicated desktop application, which often crash.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
We did, as the EIC for the project, we did have backups in place. We had plans to mimic the data and to run everything plans, it being the key word there. When we lost our glorious internet abundance on the lake bed, that's where we had to kind of back up and choose. And so my backup was in the cloud, and we couldn't get there efficiently enough to run everything and do everything that we'll talk about more tomorrow. But that we did have a couple other options. So the parsing software, the guys like Jonas and Colin that wrote that software gave me an XML output also, so that we could actually have simultaneous, because we didn't know what was going to happen on the lake bed. As it turned out, everything that could happen definitely happened. And so there's definitely multiple ways to do this. The way working with Tuomo, especially literally side by side with him, it was very efficient all over India, completely key and fill. And Tuomo, we were going to do 4K to start with. Weren't these graphics all in 4K? And
correct, they
so
were. And
our system did the resizing down, and it worked perfectly.
Yeah, which was good, because we decided to go with HD instead of 4K like a day before. And I was slightly worried, will I need to go and change all of my CSS to support the lower resolution? Luckily, Jeff was able to scale it down for me. Thank you.
And we're going to go pretty quickly because I want Mitchell to be able to show some of his graphics before we get to the top of the hour. So next question.
John Foltz, Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. Do you use any UX design programs like Figma or Adobe UX instead of Photoshop?
For broadcast work, not that often. I should be using Figma more. I use it for web projects, but not in this one.
Next question.
Sky Gleason in Seattle. Tuomo, what ROI did you get from this experience? Return on investment?
We'll see. But there was a lot of connections, a lot of friends I make, and you don't have a chance to go to Nevada, shoot some rockets. So I'm super glad that I was invited to do it. I'm very thankful.
Next question. David
Brady has our last one here. Was the office hour space experience better than ice fishing?
Yep, it was absolutely better. The reason why this came up was that my friends here in Finland, they were doing ice fishing contest at the same time I was shooting rockets in Nevada desert. So that's why we have this here. And I think it was better. They didn't get that much fish.
They just got really cold. Yeah, okay. Now, this was part of the graphics. These were all the live graphics. There were some other interstitial graphics that were used as well that Mitchell developed. Yeah, you were going to say something, Chris?
Yeah, as a transition into Mitchell. So as we were getting near the end, we had written a script. I had voiced a script. I had even cut the music to the script. I was not going to be able to do the thing. And so in the same way that I contacted Tuomo and said, can you just take control of this? Having seen Mitchell's demo reel, which if you haven't seen, get him to send you a link. It's great. I knew that I could just dump this on his lap and say, take this ball, run with it. He had a couple of requests for assets from us, but I didn't see it until it was done. And I was like, yeah, lovely, perfect. Roll it into the show. So now, Mitchell, go ahead and show your process.
Well, compared to what Tuomo was doing, because Tuomo had the added complication of dealing with a lot of data and properly syncing it and make it make sense. And I'm just in awe of what was done there. Not only that, it was beautiful. My attraction to it and my involvement was very simple because all I saw in the beginning was this patch that Predo sent to me, and I said, "That's a beautiful patch. That's a great design." And I said, wouldn't it be cool to do an animation associated with that, make that sort of a base animation you could pull from or use it to wrap the show or start the show, depending on what you wanted to do. So my idea, and I did have plenty of time to do this, was to take this basic idea and start it out as 3D elements, 3D Earth, 3D sign, 3D rocket ship, and all those elements, and had them resolve into the patch, because the patch is the graphic design, which I thought was done very, very well. So I came up with an animation, and it has sound. So with your permission, guys, I'll play that. It's just a short 10-second thing that will probably end up being used in various parts of the program. So here it is. And like everything in graphics, that took a lot of time to do.
What tools did you use to do for that?
I used a little bit of everything, and I had some help. Tex helped out on the 3D graphics. I had to start out in CD4, Cinema 4D, excuse me, and work with the patch there. So in order to have that 3D Las Vegas sign, I had to create my version of it. So I took it into Cinema 4D, ran into some animation issues that Tex helped me through, because when you translate Cinema 4D into After Effects, it's not always an easy thing to do. So, the animation of the lights going around it, giving it that rendered look so that it has a realism to it, and it's very clean. You can see there's no real aliasing happening on that. Required some work on the UVs to get the proper wrap on it.
And why did you bring the models into After Effects as opposed to rendering in Cinema?
First of all, not good enough. Frankly, I'm learning to dive deep into Cinema 4D. And the other part is I had little pieces, bits and pieces already done in After Effects for various other projects. Like in that case, the Earth I'd done for somebody else, some chemical company, and it's a very detailed Earth. The moon was a separate issue. The starscape. Rather than me try to reinvent the wheel, I went with things that I knew,
Right.
and I know After Effects really well, and it does a pretty good job. The weak point, the weak point you pointed out is that getting Cinema 4D into it, you go through either directly into After Effects, because now it's written to allow Cinema 4D, and or a program called Element 3D, which will take object files or Cinema 4D files and manage them. So my objective was to create a 3D version of everything that you've seen in the patch, and then have it resolve into the patch so that we were true to the design. Most of the time, when you're designing a graphic animation, you start with the finished piece, and then you find out how you're going to get everything there. Can you do it in an interesting way? So that was the fun part. And of course, space is involved, and anytime you can put the Earth up and fly rocket ships around, it's a wonderful thing. And I'd say it's going on my demo reel if the guys allow it. So I'm happy with it. I think it worked out well. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's good.
And I do have another piece which is typical of the packages that Chris wrote.
That's what I thought. I'm sorry. I thought that's what you were going to talk about.
Sorry. I can show one of the packages, the Fenwick engine, I called it. And it was just a quick piece. And I just took a cue from everything he had done that I'd seen before that. And it's a little lighthearted. I'm thankful that Chris did the voiceover on it, because Chris, sounds like a guy just talking to you. Hey, this is the way it is. The engine does this, and it flies around, and it's got X number of newtons. And I just like the casual approach to it. So I did the same thing with the graphics and the videos. So with your permission, guys, I'll play the Fenwick engine. I'm not sure the sound will come through unless somebody has it at their end, but I'll push it, see what happens. No sound.
We have sound, no picture.
Oh, we have a sound. Oh, we have a sound.
More buttons. Push more buttons. Let's start it over.
Let's start it over. Sorry, guys. As you can see, I do this all the time.
Rocket engines are rated with a letter of the alphabet, A through Z, and even beyond. An A-class engine has a power output of approximately 0.2 pounds of thrust. When designing a rocket, you want to achieve a 3-to-1 power-to-weight ratio. So if you have 0.2 pounds of thrust, you can shoot a rocket that weighs a little less than an ounce. But that's an A-class engine. Our rocket today weighs almost 80 pounds, well over 1,000 times as much as an A-class rocket. So, for today's launch, we are using an N-class engine. How much power does an N-class have? As you step up between each level of engine, you double the thrust with each step. What that means is that our N-class engine today is rated at 3,400 pounds of thrust. Effective rocket launches require a delicate balance of power, weight, and thrust. And using complex simulations and calculations, we can be pretty sure we will hit the flight ceiling that we have been cleared for today.
And those are all legit equations in there. So that was fun digging them up and making sure I wasn't saying the wrong things about what was going on. But look, that's just one of many packages that I saw that were excellent, well executed, and consistent with the design characteristics and style of the show. Yeah.
The part I really loved was the Chihuahua bit. I thought that was, you came up with that really quickly, and it had never even crossed my mind. So thanks for that, Mitchell.
Yeah, when you see a list of the initial graph with everything starting with an A engine, which I used to fly in my Estes engine with a Sprite rocket, it's only about yay big, all the way up to that giant N thing. As it
turned out, the stumbling block was the logarithmic scale of the engines doubling with every step. So to go from A to N, if you draw a true logarithmic graph, it gets so big so quick, it doesn't even feel right. And if you use a logarithmic scale, I contend that most people don't really understand it, and now it's just a straight line, so it's not as impressive. The dog thing was totally cute. It was great.
great. Fantastic work.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate it. And thanks for letting me participate, guys. It's fun. And in my own little way, I respect the fact that they both just said, go, have fun.
You didn't participate. You saved our bacon. Thank you.
Well,
my pleasure.
You know, and I just think it's amazing between everybody that put it together, Tuomo and Mitch and everybody else on the team, just how many people. And there's something really fun about the fact that you just get to do it the way you're going to do it, as opposed to, you know, the 1,000 layers of revision and process that most of us go through, you know, for those. I think it's one of the opportunities for these shows is to, you know, it is to play with it and play with that expression, as opposed to having it be something that is, you know, sometimes soul sucking. so the not that I've, you know, I mean, it's like, and anybody, the problem that I have is that anybody that's worked with me on graphics knows that I can be that way very much. Like I'm from that world, and so it's very hard for me not to, you know, I can sit there and just tweak weird little things because I'm used to, that's just how I approach it. So
what I hear you're saying is you want a beige rectangular box. Done.
Perhaps there was the added advantage of the fact that there was no time to do all of this.
Yeah.
And you know, Alex was kind enough to point out a couple of things that I could have done, and I sent a note back with about 18 other things that could have been done.
He even sent me one thing, and I'm like, "Does this bother you?" It bothers me. You know, so it was. I can be really difficult in that area because it wasn't.
It wasn't difficult. It was the most obvious thing that somebody could pick out, and you and I noticed it. I'm not sure everybody else did, but
yeah.
I have an overall theory about things like this, and right or wrong, it's my theory. You can overwhelm mediocrity with quantity. Okay, and so like, were any of the roll-ins perfect works of art? Nope. They were packages. They were news packages. Mm-hmm. You throw them in, but we had a lot of them to go to. So it had, and this is for tomorrow, but having a lot of variety, I think helped us.
Yeah. No, it's, and I think that it, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that you know, I think that those were the packages help a lot. You know, like it just there's a couple of things that packages do, and I guess we'll talk about this tomorrow. We're running out of time. I actually have to jump to this, but they also give you a breath from a production perspective. You want packages
Absolutely.
Because you're live. You want, like I always tell people, like, so what are our packages? And the things that I love, by the way, are time lapses, because you can always say coming up next, and you run a time lapse that's got like a 4-minute thing. You can cut away from it anytime you want. You can go to it anytime you want. You can, you know, that like, that's just,
love them.
People love them. You don't lose a single viewer. Like a time lapse of a build, you never lose anybody. In fact, if you cut out early, they're like, oh, like, I didn't get to see how it ended. So they're waiting for the reveal, and because we've done them for big events, and you see on the comments, they're like, what happened? We didn't get to the finish. You know, like they're all watching. So
I think we definitely need like a 30 or 40 foot pole with a GoPro doing a time lapse of the empty playa where our camp starts to build up, because it was a lot of work.
Just this last thing, and then we'll jump.
Yeah.
The coolest thing that we did was build a cycling time lapse. So what it did is it was grabbing the frames in the computer, and it was replaying them, but it would keep on updating. So it would just keep going longer as it, so that you could watch it, and if you came like 2 hours later, you'd see more frames. You know, and it would, and it was always rolling those, but it was a little. Turned out to be a 6-month project to do that. So anyway, we are now going to jump. Thank you to our producers for all the great questions. It's hard to keep up because our panel is getting so much better at answering the questions. We're to the point. People are answering the questions, and so we're cutting through those, and it's great. What's interesting is that by doing that, by answering questions that can be answered succinctly and well, I can relax a little bit. I relax a little bit on the questions that, we want to spend a little more time on this one, you know. And so, you know, so the key is for us to be, you know, with questions there. I'm trying to figure out how to delineate that in the back end, but I think that we've gotten better at answering questions when there's a good answer, you know, or there's an answer that can be answered in 10 words, not 1,000. it leaves us more time to like, oh, with the green screen one, we stretched that one out a little bit because we were, cutting through things. And so I think it's we're learning as we go to do something special. So anyway, so great work with the producers. Great questions today. Just really both for the first hour and the second hour, they were deep and probing and just really interesting questions. And thank you to the panel. We can't do this without you. Great answers.
Tuomo.
Great conversation. Thank you to Tuomo. Thank you to Mitchell. Thanks to all the panelists who did this. And we'll talk more about the production tomorrow. So stay tuned for that. Now we're going to jump into After Hours, talk about some of the web design with Ken Jordan, and we'll see you there.
Thanks for letting us share.
So good.
Is my audio okay?